Since 1990, we have spent millions of euros and tens of thousands of research hours to find scientific answers to life's most important and challenging questions. What makes us happy? What makes us healthy? How can we heal from physical and mental disease? How can we heal emotionally and sexually so we can be happy in our relationships? How can we develop our talents and be of value to the world? We have interviewed more than 15,000 people and asked more than 4,000 different questions. After 20 years of intensive research, we are beginning to find the answers we have been looking for so long. We have already presented these answers in 250 research papers and about 30 books. Now we bring it all to you. Freud's most important theory was the theory of the Oedipus complex. The Oedipus complex, we all know the story, and many people find it quite funny, but it's actually a serious story and a good story. Freud discovered that to be happy we need to be sexually free. And the reason we were not free is because our sexuality is oppressed. Our sexuality is to be found in our subconscious. So Freud studied the reason for that. He asked, why is our sexuality oppressed? What is happening in early childhood? And he discovered that the child is very sexual, and the most sexually attractive objects in the child's world seem to be the parent of the opposite gender. Basically, a boy falls in love with his mother and a girl falls in love with her father. But of course, this can never be. Every good father will take his daughter on his lap and say, "Darling, you're the most wonderful girl in the world, and if I didn't have a mother, I would definitely marry you when you grow up like this. You are so wonderful and you are my little princess." But the incest taboo makes it impossible for the girl or the boy to realize their sexuality, and instead of living it out, which is totally impossible, of course, it becomes oppressed. This is necessary for healthy family dynamic, of course, but said Freud, destructive for the human being, because now our sexuality is basically stuck in our relationship with the opposite-sexed parent. So when we become adult, we need to heal sexually. We need to find a partner that can be substitute for our opposite-gendered parent. And now in this relationship we can finally open up for sexuality and live what we instinctively wanted to live all the time. But as everybody knows, this is not so easy, because now we have a lot of shame and guilt and negative feelings associated with our sexuality. So we cannot just allow it to express itself when we held it back through our childhood. So what happens is that many people, they go to a therapist to be helped with this problem. And what normally happens is, if you're lucky to find a good therapist that can be stand-in for the parent you never really had, that you fall madly in love with this therapist. This is, said Freud, the sexual transference, which is the key to healing in psychoanalysis. But the problem is, very often this calls on a response called countertransference, meaning that the therapist also falls in love with the patient, because now the patient who totally adores you and think you're the most beautiful and wonderful thing in the world becomes so wonderful and so affirmative for you that you start to dream about this person. Couldn't it be nice to be together? This is exactly how I would like my own wife or my own husband to be, like, totally crazy about me. And, so the sexual called libidinous gratification in the therapy becomes so strong that it becomes more interesting and important than therapeutic progress. So suddenly the therapy is not longer about developing and growing and freeing sexuality and learning and exploring yourself and maturing. It is just about meeting your therapist and flirting, basically. and of course this is crazy, because you can flirt for many years. Flirting is not healthy in itself. So you're paying $100 or $200 per session to come and flirt with somebody, which is now totally idealized as the idealist father, and you can go there for many years, and you can pay a shitload of money for the therapy that never set you free. So we call this Freud's trap, because this is very often happening in therapy, that the patients, they just get stuck, and the therapist gets stuck, and this goes for 10, even 20 years with weekly sessions where they're just coming, they're flirting, nothing's happening. So this can go on forever and ever. And you see the good business model there. But unfortunately, of course, this is the kind of abuse of the patient is a kind of psychological and financial abuse. So we need to look into the historical reason for this setup, because Freud came from a tradition of holistic doctors, which didn't work exactly like Freud did. The classical doctors, they combined talk therapy and touch therapy. They, in psychoanalysis, Freud also, in the beginning of his work, massaged the legs of neurotic women to release sexual energies and all these things, as the Hippocratic doctors did. But he got into some political problems. He was under scrutiny of the fathers of the sexually abused girls, basically, which he treated. So he had to keep a distance to avoid the suspicion that he also abused the girls as the parents did. So this was a really tricky situation, and he solved it by declaring that bodywork was out. Now we only talked, and that in a way gave him peace to work and built this great clinic in Vienna around the 1920s. But it obviously didn't work for Freud. Freud had a very brilliant vice director in this clinic, which is Reich, the famous Wilhelm Reich, who noticed that the patients, after the bodywork stopped, didn't improve any longer. So he started to criticizing Freud and the system of psychoanalysis and said, this is not working, because now sexuality has become an interrelational thing, a thing between the patient and the therapist, instead of being what it was in the old days, where it was an inner affair of the patient. In the old days, sexuality was treated as an inner affair, not a thing between therapist and patient. It was energy work, where the patient was working on his or her own sexuality, helped by the therapist who could talk and also touch to make the energies flow. So Reich said, we are not doing this right. We cannot discontinue this 1,000-year-old tradition of combining talk therapy and bodywork, because we are putting patients in a trap and they're not getting well. So it came to a big conflict between Wilhelm Reich and Sigmund Freud, and about 1928 Reich left the clinic in Vienna, and Freud was extremely strong politically these days. So he was involved in an attack, a malicious attack on Reich that forced Reich to move to Germany, simply to leave the country. But the bad name Freud and his friends had created for Reich made it impossible for Reich to work in Germany, so he had to flee to Denmark, where he also got into problems, so he fled to Norway. So, and this didn't work for him either, so he had to go to America. And in 1956, Reich died in a prison because the American Association of Psychiatrists had prosecuted him for not for sexual abuse, because he didn't do anything wrong in his therapy, but for exporting therapy boxes, because Reich believed that the sexual energy was a cosmic energy, and you could recharge it if you were in a wooden box taped inside with alufoil. He called it organ energy. A very crazy idea, seen with the scientific eyes of today, but he believed in it strongly, and he wasn't really clear that this was also a placebo effect, obviously. But he got 2 years of imprisonment in court case he didn't even appear in, and he died miserably in the prison. In this process that was originally initiated many years before in Vienna. So it seems that Freud won the political war against the holistic therapy, but still today we see that holistic medicine works. It takes like 20 sessions to help people with really severe issues around sexuality, around psychological problems, unhappiness, existential problems. And we see that people go in psychoanalysis for 5, 10, 15 years, 1 session a week, or even 2 sessions a week without good results. So almost 100 years later, we can look back at it and say Reich was right, but he was not politically smart. Freud was a smarter, so he won the battle, but the patients they lost.